Thank you for listening to the Speaking Out on Sex Abuse podcast with hosts Clara and Jimmy Hinton. If you're new to the podcast, please look us up on your favorite podcast app, subscribe, like, and share so that you never miss an episode. If you'd like to further support us, visit patreon.com/speakingout and check out the different rewards. You'll find exclusive rewards if you sign up as a patron of the podcast. Thank you for your support, and let's get into the show. Welcome to this week's podcast. It is 2023, so we bring in the new year with excitement and new beginnings. And yes, absolutely.
Attitude. It's I don't know. There's just something very wonderful about the word new, and a year into it, even better.
It is. So we're excited to start fresh. We, as always, thank our patrons who make this podcast possible. We're up to, we have, I believe, 69 patrons right now. The last I checked earlier this morning. So we want to thank each and every one of you. And of course, we always welcome more. We will still plug our monthly training that we do. We do a monthly training for the $25 and up. And those are professional trainings that I've done across the nation, but I would say they're even more improved now, more refined. And then at the 50 and up, we do a monthly book club where we meet in a Zoom with our handful of patrons, and we go through it chapter by chapter, and that's a lot of fun. We enjoy doing that.
Incredible too. The insight that you get when you get together as a book club
Yep.
is unbelievable, because you dig way beyond just the pages of the book.
Yeah.
So we invite you all to join on those levels of being a patron. And Jimmy, this could be the year that we reach the number we need for our retreat.
I know, 100 at 150, we
Yeah.
are doing a retreat, and we're going to plan it and have an in-person retreat for our patrons. So, and that's at any level.
I would
So
love
you could
that,
sign up at the
yeah.
$5 level,
Yeah,
and
love it.
you will certainly be included. Okay, so we wanted to kind of do a recap of this past year, kind of a year in review. And, it was a heavy year for us. We had, on a lot of different levels, but I think the biggest level was when my oldest sister, Michelle, got incredibly ill last February. She went in the hospital. It was a surprise to everybody. And she was on life support within, 24 hours of going to the hospital.
Yeah.
She had severe pancreatitis. She got worse. She didn't get better. She got worse and wound up in Pittsburgh and had a team of specialists, a team of doctors across the nation.
They conferred weekly, sometimes twice weekly, about
Yeah.
her case, just trying to keep her alive,
Yeah.
basically.
Which was really unique. There were a lot of unique challenges that they faced, and so they had specialists from all over the nation, and some of the top docs for sure. And then I think it was in June, right? We said our final goodbyes to her. She was given less than 48 hours to live, and was in beyond critical shape. So the family came in from out of state. Everybody was able to be here. We all came to Pittsburgh. Not everybody was able to go in because we had to limit how many people could go in. So it was back to what you and I do, where we divvy things up, and and how do you decide who gets to say goodbye and who doesn't?
Rough. That was very rough. How do you even say goodbye?
Right.
How do you do that? That whole scenario is something I don't want to live through again.
No.
Yet reality is that happens for a lot of us, a lot
Yeah.
of families, and this happened to be our year for that. We also got to see what prayer does, I believe.
Yeah, absolutely.
I have no other explanation.
Yeah.
I really don't.
Yeah. Literally the day that we said goodbye to her, the last person to go in was her 9-year-old daughter. Up to that point, she was not allowed to visit because of their I think, personally, I'm not a doctor, but I think they're kind of antiquated policies,
agree.
COVID policies that need
Yeah,
updated.
I agree.
They would not allow her daughter to visit her, period, in the hospital. So she was months without seeing her daughter. And then they got special permission from, I believe, the board of the hospital,
It was,
UPMC.
yes, they had to meet and gave a decision that since this was the final goodbye,
They would allow
that,
her to visit.
yes, they would allow her in.
She went in. My niece went in. She visited, and within, I would say, within minutes, um, they all of her drains opened up. My sister, all of her drains opened up, and fluids started being
It
expelled from her
was
body. She,
nothing other than
eh,
a miracle
yeah,
to the doctors. They had no explanation. I call it just that will to live. And I think when she heard
hmm
her daughter's voice, she knew she had to live.
yeah,
And everything within her started fighting.
hmm
She had had heart failure, if you
yeah. All of
remember.
her
She
organs,
was,
all of her major
yeah,
organs had
all of
shut
her
down. I
organs
mean,
had shut
completely.
down. And when she heard her daughter's voice, everything just seemed to change.
Yeah,
So
and literally within
it
minutes. That's not
was,
an
yeah.
exaggeration.
And of course, we didn't know was that last hurrah, that last
hmm
temporary few moments or an hour, as happens with a lot of people.
Yeah,
They
that
may
last pickup,
sit
and
up
then they
talk,
just,
and then yeah,
and then they die.
but that wasn't so.
No.
It just continued on a healing streak from
and,
there.
and she kept getting better and better. And long
Yes.
story short, we just celebrated Christmas with Michelle, who
Yes.
came over and looked fantastic.
She really does. Now, after this June episode, she remained in the hospital. It was clear through September.
hmm
So it wasn't like she miraculously stood up and gained all her weight. She
It was
was
a lot
a
of
little
ups and downs.
skeleton, a lot of ups and downs, but her organs all remained steady
hmm
from that point on. So,
Yeah.
yeah, it's been quite a year,
Yeah.
hasn't it, for us personally,
Yeah.
and for many of you that we know of the things that you've gone through.
hmm
Also, you know,
Yeah.
year.
And, so that was kind of our, very tough year, but, I feel like we were spared tremendous grief, and, we witnessed a miracle, and, not everybody's going to experience that. And, in fact, when we finish recording here, I'm going over to the house of one of my church members who I just spoke with this morning. He's saying his final goodbye to his wife. She has hours, possibly days, but probably more likely hours to live. She has advanced Alzheimer's, and is certainly in her final stages. There's so much grief everywhere, and I think if we were to go back and kind of recap not just this year, but recap
Past decade.
the past decade plus, we could sum it up in one word, and that word would be grief.
Absolutely. We've had so many life changes.
hmm
Just one right after another. You've had the death of a brother. I've had the death of a son.
hmm
We've had the near death of Michelle. Lingering illness, chronic illness. We've had the death of my sister,
hmm
Annette, who was my only living sister, younger than me. We've had, numerous deaths of friends.
Yeah, from the end of 2020 to halfway through 2021, I lost 5 of my very good friends.
COVID has taken its toll. We could go on and on and on. The
hmm
life changes have been innumerable, and the toll that it's taken has been, heavy toll.
Yeah.
For real.
Yeah. So, I remember you telling me years ago, and I wrote about this in my book. I wrote this quote from you. You said, "There's one thing that unites every single living, breathing human being on the face of the planet, and that's grief.
Yeah.
That's the one
Yes.
thing that
We-
every
Yes.
single person has in
We
common.
do.
We're all linked by grief." And so the work that you do with grief, and she has a Facebook page that's absolutely phenomenal, and it's huge. That thing has grown exponentially. But it's Silent Grief, Child Loss Support, And so, mom's specialty is in that field of grief and walking people through that path of that journey of grief. And you do it exceptionally well. And so that kind of points us to our next topic, which is a super hopeful topic, and something that we are genuinely excited about. We put our heads together. We've been praying about this for a long time, and just kind of for God to give us direction. And to be honest, I've attempted multiple times to do an online course on abuse prevention. I've started and stopped that probably 5 different times in the last couple years, and I keep getting stopped in my tracks. And it's kind of like I think about Paul on his second missionary journey. Luke records in the book of Acts that the Spirit of Jesus kept them from ministering throughout all of Asia.
Right.
And so for this whole big part of the journey, they did nothing but walk, and they kept having closed door after closed door after closed door. They couldn't do what they were set out to do in all of Asia, and that is a massive land region that they were not permitted to preach in all of Asia. And so I kind of feel like I've been in that position where I've been like, all right, I'm not going around doing in-person trainings anymore. I stopped that, COVID put a stop to that, and I kind of reevaluated, and I was like, I don't want to live on, globe trotting. I have a family, young kids. And so people were pressing me, you got to do an online course, So I started and stopped it multiple times. And I found I didn't have the passion behind it. And it's so bizarre to be saying that right now.
I feel that when you have dedicated your life to living as a Christian, that you do have the guidance of the Holy Spirit. And if that guidance isn't there and that Spirit helping drive you, it won't happen. And God, in God's Word, it says those doors will be closed. And God nudges us, sometimes gently, sometimes with a big clonk on the head, to go in a different direction.
Yeah.
And I think that's what's happening.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. Yes.
So, I was sitting thinking about this and praying about this and talking to people and like, what is it that I do well? What is it that Mom does well? And it kept coming back to, we walk with people in their grief.
Right.
And I call it sitting on the ash heap. In the book of Job, when Job's whole world burned down around him, literally, he's sitting on the ash heap, and his friends come to him at first, and and they're silent, which I think was when they had the most wisdom. But they sat with him on the ash heap, and people keep saying like, that's what you guys do really well. You walk with people who are hurting. And so I talked to Mom, and I was like, this was just a few weeks ago, and I was like, you're gonna think I'm crazy, but what do you think about developing a course together? Because we already work together. We do the podcast. We work really well together, and things just click with us. And
that's a good thing.
I know it is. It's a great thing.
That's a blessing. It truly is. Yes.
And so I said to Mom, what do you think about working on a course together where we walk people from a journey of being stuck in this grief? Because we know grief well.
Ooh, we sure do.
We know grief well.
Yes.
And move them from that place of feeling stuck and despair and
lonely, desolate, forgotten by God.
Yeah.
All of those things, being punished by God.
Yeah.
Sometimes you feel like God has picked you and says, "Okay, here you go.
Yep.
This is your dealie here."
Yep.
All of those feelings of where are you, God? The whole
feeling guilty
feeling
for being
guilty.
stuck and not being able to move forward.
For sure.
How many parents do you have who've lost children who say to you like, we feel guilty that we haven't emptied their dresser drawer. Their dresser drawer still has clothes in from 15 years ago when my son was alive.
There's also guilt if you begin to find joy, and a lot of parents feel guilty as though they're forgetting their child.
Yeah.
And that burdens them. There are all kinds of things that go on with grief.
Yeah.
And we have dealt with that with all of you because people who have been abused
Hmm.
are very much in a state of grief.
And
Let's
it's very
face it.
similar. I mean,
Yeah, it's very
it's very
similar.
similar
Yes.
to child loss. In that grief affects
Oh,
us
there are
in very similar ways.
universal aspects of grief that affect all of us. And Jimmy said it well. We are all linked together by this one
Hmm.
common denominator of grief.
Yeah.
In my early classes, I always taught that every person alive, statistically, it's been proven, will experience at least one major grief
Hmm.
in his or her life, but normally three, and that's a lot of grief.
Yeah, it is.
That's a lot, and I'm talking major, like the death of a spouse or the death of a child, the loss of a home, the loss of your health,
Hmm.
any numbers of things, and that are major
Loss
like
of a
that.
marriage, lost.
Divorce,
Yeah. I
yes,
mean, on
yeah,
and on and on.
on
Yeah.
and on. And when you think about that and assess your own life, you get thinking, yeah, that's right.
Hmm.
And have we really come to grips with that? Have we really walked through that grief to that better place, to that place of healing? Or are we holding on to a lot of that? The guilt, the remorse, the sadness, the loneliness that prohibits us from
Yeah.
moving forward
Yeah.
into a place of healing
Yeah.
and light
Well,
and joy.
I mean, and I'm like, I know we're both like starting to smile here, and I
Yeah,
think like
I
as much as we've been through, and I mean, believe me, I've shed a lot of tears, a lot of tears. It's unimaginable. I mean, just the deaths alone, losing five of my friends, and then I'm actually going to write a blog post. I just thought of this on my drive home from Michigan yesterday. Um, but I'm going to write a blog post this week called Caskets, and just how I've spent so much of my time standing beside caskets, walking with people as they say their final goodbyes
it's
with
so
with
sad.
people,
Yeah,
and they're not. It's not just people
no,
where I'm the minister, and like I'm detached somehow. These are good friends of mine. These are
right.
these are really good friends, and I mean everything from suicides to I buried a couple month old little baby. I mean, just on and on and on. I've stood beside so many stinking caskets, and uh, to be quite honest, I mean, it weighs so heavily on my heart. Um, but I keep going back to um, the countless times. One of my favorite places to spend is on your porch, going out to your
I
house,
love my
and we
porch.
sit,
Yeah,
and when our
me
family gets
too. Yeah,
together, we
yeah,
we cut up, we laugh, we joke, we smile,
yeah,
in the
yes,
midst of the tears that we experience, we sit and we have cups of coffee,
yeah,
and we just sit like this, and we sit
yes,
and we talk, and there's so
yes.
much hope.
We bare our souls. We are who
Absolutely.
we are, and we love each other as we are, and that's so important.
Yeah.
And where we are in life,
Yeah.
and just can feel totally comfortable with just being ourselves.
Yeah.
That's so important when
Yeah.
we're grieving. So
Yeah.
very important.
And we don't want to hold on to this ourselves, and that's
No.
what I get excited about, because when I came to her, I was like, we we need to help teach people how to get where we are, where we can sit
Yes.
and have a cup of coffee, and
Yes.
we can let our whole heart pour out, and we can cry, and we can weep, and we can wail, and we can do all the different things when we have to grieve. Let that kind of bleed out of us, and then sit and
And
find our joy again.
yes, yes. There is nothing better than when you've gone through that valley, that
Hmm.
horrible, deep, dark, lonely valley, then coming out of it and seeing the light once again and seeing people around you that can enjoy that light with you.
Yeah.
And it is so just, it gives you a new burst of life. It
Yeah,
truly does.
for
New
sure.
hope. New hope. That's
Yeah.
all. Yeah. And don't we all need that? Oh my.
Yeah, and I mean, like we
How
said,
we need it.
no matter what kind of grief it is,
No.
I mean, grief at the end of the day, and I don't want this to sound cliche or insensitive, because it's not, but at the end of the day, grief is grief, and
It is,
it
Jimmy.
hurts,
It hurts.
um,
Yeah.
no matter what the source of that grief is. Grief is two things. It's unique
to each person. We each
and it's universal.
Yes, that's it. Which makes it totally this thing that we all know, understand, and experience, but we need to know what to do with it. What do you do with that grief?
Yeah.
What's God say we do with that grief?
Yeah.
What are we supposed to do with
Yep.
it? Do we carry it forever? Do we share it? Do we hide it? I talk about often in my grief talks going through periods of sweeping my grief under the rug. Wanting to be the brave mother, the brave person, and not show others my grief or talk about it. That doesn't work, believe me, because then you have a mountain of grief to deal with. So what do you do with that?
And you can't process it when you sit on it, or you try to tuck it away. You can't. There's no way to process it, and I did that, and it's not healthy.
I think everybody starts at, or most people try doing that. We wear what I call, with my child loss people, we put a mask on to the world. Sometimes we feel like we have to. When you go back to work, you put that mask on. You don't want to be crying all day. People don't want to see you crying.
Yep, you got to be strong. Be there for other people. Be strong. Put on your strong face.
Things are changing now. People are understanding more about grief. Now is the time that I think we need to learn all the aspects of grief. Grief has many different faces, many different faces and stages, and learn what to do along each of those stages.
Yeah.
So I'm super excited about this.
I am too, and I as we've walked through our journey, I was praying about this, and I said it makes sense. Like that's the one thing that, even though we talk about abuse prevention, and this whole podcast is about, sexual abuse and preventing abuse, and, how to walk people through that, at the end of the day, the one thing that we haven't really addressed is, what do you do with the grief? And that's, to me, that's the biggest component of all of this, is that it's not just the unanswered questions, it's that there's this whole shift in identity. There's, to the spouses. Look how many spouses of abusers have reached out to you and said, I don't know what to do. Like, what's my identity? Am I the wife of an abuser now? Is that my identity? There's this big identity crisis when you've been abused. Am I a victim? Am I a survivor? Am I neither of those? Am I a conqueror? Like, what am I? And to me, that's grief, and that's grief rearing its head, and it can become so crippling, and we don't want people to be crippled. I look around. I just saw a post this morning, and I'm not anti-medication, so don't mishear me.
No.
But I'm anti-medication only, as if that's going to fix people's grief. And I just saw a post this morning on social media, and she's a young woman, and has kids, has a happy marriage. You look from the outside in, and she looks and seems really happy, very successful businesswoman. She just put a post up this morning and said, how do I move beyond this anxiety and getting off of these stupid pills, and I feel so stuck, and I feel like I'm just like I'm in this fog constantly.
Millions upon millions of people are there. I have never grieved like a movie star or anything like that, except, no, you probably didn't know this.
Keanu Reeves, isn't it? Oh, geez, here we go.
When Princess died, I remember when she died, I didn't want to believe that happened. I just looked at her. I used to look at her like she was the most beautiful persona of a woman. She was gentle. She was kind. She was sincere. And I just felt like I just loved her. I loved so many aspects about her. And I did grieve that loss. Recently, I have lost sleep over Twitch taking his life.
Yeah.
I adored him. He was funny. He was kind. He was full of laughter. I loved his
Always
dance
smiling.
moves.
Yeah. Yeah.
Always smiling. Just gentle in his nature. And to think that Twitch felt so alone that he took his life. It is
Yeah.
burdening me tremendously. And how do we help people? How do we know, Jimmy, when someone is in that deep grief?
Yeah.
And those are things that Jimmy and I will be unfolding
Hmm.
as we walk along this course, this journey. These are some of the questions we hope to answer too.
Yeah.
You know, it's it's real stuff,
Yeah.
real stuff.
It really is.
It is.
Yeah. I mean, I know. I stood at the casket of one of my really good friends that took his life, and I thought, my goodness, like here's this young guy
Yeah. How does that
who
happen?
had a new baby,
How does that happen?
a
Yeah.
beautiful, beautiful relationship with, and like this woman was just so kind and so gracious, and they had a great relationship, and and that spun her world into just
It
complete
does.
confusion, as it does. But I remember just when I did that funeral, I just thought, I I don't know, like for that to be your answer, that you're at such a low place, that that's your answer to to what you feel
Right.
is a solution. We've got to do better than
We
this.
do.
We've got to
We have to
address
help
these
people. We
issues
do.
that
We have
that so
to.
many other people are feeling,
Right.
and that's not, again, not a judgment on people who
Not
take
at
their
all.
life
And
at
that's not a
all.
unique
Um,
situation.
no, so many
There
people are
are
there.
millions of people suffering right now with those thoughts, those feelings,
Sure.
the aloneness, the depression, the sadness, the
Mhm.
feeling of the weight of the world.
Mhm.
And I think that's where Jimmy and I are saying we need to help.
Yeah.
And we know that the community of abused people have felt this so often, of being alone, of when you've tried to use your voice, you've been shot down. What do? If you don't, that's grieving, that heavy, heavy stuff, and you've not been given a platform to talk about it, a way to
Mhm.
express it. These are the things we want to address.
For sure.
Yeah.
Yeah, so, and some people may be asking, well, is this just is it child loss? Is it death, death of somebody, or is it, different kinds of grief? We're going to do different modules for different types of grief, because there are, again, grief
Oh,
is
yeah.
unique and it's universal.
Right.
So, there will be modules on sexual abuse, the aftermath of being a survivor, or just a family member of an abuser.
I'm smiling, by the way, because a thought came, and I'm going to share this. You probably think I'm crazy, Jimmy, but
Oh, I know you are.
I'm going to share this. I live in a tiny community, Shanksville, about a 230 people,
Mm-hmm.
maybe if that. One little lady who we all loved and adored. I won't use her name because family members may be listening to this podcast, but she was in an abusive uh, marriage. Her husband was a severe alcoholic, and he didn't permit her to go to church. So she wanted to go to church so badly, as a lot of little old ladies do. And in
Mm-hmm.
Shanksville, we have 4 churches, boom, 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 right in a row. She could walk to any one of them. So she would go out and walk to church, and often he would be hiding behind the bushes and come out, and he would drag her home and beat her. So she had a hope, a dream of getting her license. She never had her license. And one of the first things she did when he died, the community came together and they said, "There's his car sitting. You need to get your license." And a couple people from the community helped her. They took her out driving. They showed her how to drive, took her to get her permit, and then she passed. She told how she expressed some of her grief. She, I love this so much.
I don't know this
We
story.
express our grief in many different ways. And when you keep saying, we grieve uniquely, we do.
Mm-hmm.
She said, and I loved when she told me this story, to the cemetery. She drove up on his plot, and she said, I just kept backing back and forth over him, she said, till I dug holes in that grave. And I just laughed hysterically, and I thought, if that isn't a good grief release, I don't know what is.
Yeah.
And that's how she did it.
Yeah.
And
Absolutely.
she said,
Yeah.
I
There's.
had to get it out. And she said, I did. And then she drove off, and she was fine.
Yep.
But
There's no one size fits all.
no, there's no right or wrong way.
Right.
But that's how she chose to work through her grief. And
I think of the little old lady in the old Wendy's commercials. Where's the beef?
Yes.
She has this big steering wheel.
Yes. Well, that's how this little lady was. And all of us, when she would pull into the post office, the daily meeting place in Shanksville, we'd all keep our cars far away from her because she'd come around. I love her so much.
That's
Just had to
fantastic.
add that for a little lightness.
Yeah, well, yeah, and that's what, Mom and I talked about this, and we said everybody's journey is going to be different. Everybody's journey is going to be unique, their path to healing. And so our job, our goal is going to be to help people come up with creative ways to find their path, your path,
Yes.
not our path, because it's not a one-size-fits-all. It can't be. So to help you find that path and to get on that path of healing, to where you learn to not only manage grief, but then to kind of embrace it. I feel like grief has become really a constant companion in our life.
And yes.
And if you know how to manage it, that's okay.
I've written about
That's not
that.
bad.
Grief can soften our hearts.
Yeah.
And bring us to a new place in life where we have compassion and kindness for others that we otherwise wouldn't have.
Right.
Because we understand
Yes.
their pain.
Yes. So if you are interested in that, we're going to plug it now. We have not developed a course yet, but we will be soon, very soon.
Well, we solicit your prayers and thoughts for that. Also,
Absolutely.
there will be a point where we solicit your input on that, on how we can help.
Yes.
Because we want to make this really something that is helpful,
Yes.
very, very helpful.
So yeah, our initial pre-course, which will be kind of a course light, and just to give us a feel for how it's going, and what we need to tweak before we do the final course, that'll be offered definitely at a big discount. So if any of you are interested in that, let us know. Send us your email. We'll put you on the email list, and we'll keep you informed. But we are super excited about this, and I feel like finally something big has clicked within us, and God has kind of pointed to
God
something
is
that we've done all
speaking.
along.
Yes, God is
And that's
speaking. Yes.
kind of managing grief and helping walk people through that.
Absolutely.
So yeah, 2023. It's a new year, new beginnings, and we're excited to walk through this year with you guys. We're certainly going to continue to podcast, so subscribe if you've not done so that you don't miss an episode. Well, thank you guys for tuning in, and we look forward to walking through 2023 with you. All right, we'll catch you next episode.
Thanks again for listening to today's episode. A special thank you to our patrons who make this podcast possible. Please help us get the word out by searching for the Speaking Out on Sex Abuse podcast in your favorite podcast app. Be sure to hit subscribe and rate the show. Please consider supporting the podcast by becoming a patron and check out the rewards our patrons receive.